young radio station, using our voice to rate your choice. Stay tuned.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 90.8 Hills FM, the voice of change. This is your RJ Gugu Haralu, and today we have someone who is a very important person, somebody who actually has been making a difference for so many years, staying with us, being with us, and today Hills FM is very fortunate to have him here. So it is none other than our very own Kapatao Neichute Doulo. So welcome to 90.8 Hills FM.
Thank you, Gugu.
It is, I don't know. To me, honestly speaking, it's a dream come true. Never thought someone that I admire and someone I really follow and someone that I really look up to. And it's not just about me. It's a lot of young people who actually look up to you, have listened to you, and have really been making an effort to follow the things that you have advised for so many years. And it is here that we are fortunate to hear some of the things that perhaps many have not heard, some things many may have heard, but we're really making an effort today to hear something very different. And listeners, I do hope that you would get to learn something and be able to make an impact and be inspired. And Kapatao Neichute Doulo, he is the founder and the person behind creating the Entrepreneur Associate. And being a CEO, he's also the first Ashoka Fellow from Nagaland. And it's not just about being the first Ashoka Fellow, but it is also about the impact that he has been making in the state, but not just the state, but the people around him, places that he has visited, and how he's expanding his vision and his mission through the conviction that he has in his heart in making a difference. So it is here, Kapatao, that we would like to know a little bit about you and would like to hear. So it's yours.
Yeah, thank you, Gugu. It's a long story on why I do the work that I'm doing now, but I feel that it stems forth from my childhood experiences of wanting to have a better place for our Naga people to live in. And when I came to Kohima in 1990 after my matriculation, some changes were very visible in Kohima. For instance, shops were closing by 4:30, which in the early 80s was not so. My uncles who were in retail trade business would do business with the candlelight or lantern light. But by 1990, people were scared. So before the sundown, people would close down their shops. And that was something I found very different. Two was young people, especially collegiate. People, when they pass out from matric in those days, they go straight into college called pre-university, for today what is known as class 11 and 12. And so I found out that people who went to college actually were averse to manual jobs. In those days, very few had suitcases. Most of the college students would have a big trunk made out of tin sheets and a huge bedding to carry about. Young people who were in college would refuse to carry that, but would hire porters, which we call dushalis, and would pay them money, even though they're from the village and they couldn't afford to pay them. I found out that people would not even carry firewood, which in the village was normal. So I thought, no, this mindset has to be challenged. This has to be changed. So when I was 19 years of age, having given my pre-university final exams, I talked with a number of my friends and we formed a group called Beacon of Hope to demonstrate dignity of labor by taking up manual jobs. And so to prove that for our college admissions, why not earn money through our hard work and not ask money from our parents. So that gave me a lasting impression that no, we really have to work, because at a young age I realized that we Nagas have a far way to go if we are to survive in this modern economy. And so after I finished my postgraduate studies, I continued with this dream of encouraging people to stand on their own feet. And I realized that entrepreneurship is one of the best ways to encourage young people to be on their own feet. And not just that, as I studied economics, I came to realize that actually entrepreneurship is the key to economic development. And so I taught in a college for 2 years. I taught economics. In those days, it was not difficult to get government jobs. And basically, everybody would be getting a job if you have done your graduation or post-graduation. So there is nothing great to say that we got a government job. Today, that is something like most of the young people would vie for, but they would not get that. But in our days, government job was readily available. And but then it was a challenge for us to think otherwise, not to be employed in the government, but to come out in the market and become an entrepreneur. So when I resigned from my job to promote entrepreneurship, it was quite a tough decision, but I was convinced that this is the right thing for us to do. For us to grow in postmodern economy, Nagas had to change their mindset. So that's how I formed the Entrepreneurs Associates, brought in other like-minded friends, and we started teaching our people how to do business. And I learned it by selling in the streets, reading a lot of books, and we started training, motivating, and helping our other young people who wanted to take up entrepreneurship.
So Kapatao, I think if I've heard it correctly, you actually talked about selling newspapers. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. So can you say something a little bit about that part, where the sense of dignity of labor, how it started growing in you? And I think a little specific on that. And I'm sure our listeners would be very keen to hear a person like you who started off, from the scratch.
Okay. So in 1992, it was really a shame to even carry your bedding. So it was not possible for a young college student to be selling newspaper in the streets of Kohima or to be doing porter jobs in Kohima. But we thought we will challenge that mindset and demonstrate what we call the pride of work, because I grew up in the village. And in our village, Naga village, work is pride. If you don't work, you are considered as a useless person. But as I saw the new Naga society, which was happening in the urban areas, people were getting used to those days minis and kanchas, and the young crowd who were children of what we called the officers' family or the nouveau rich, people were looking down on manual jobs. So we thought, let us start selling newspaper and let us start beginning to be porters. And so we were the first to sell newspapers in those days. We were the first to be carrying people's bedding from the NST buses and taking it to the place where they wanted us to drop. We were doing the porter job of taking down snails for our women vendors, carrying people's luggages and firewood. At first, we were quite fearful if people would laugh at us. But actually, it went well. People began to appreciate that. And I remember in 1992, the All India Radio came and interviewed me. And they were quite surprised to know that we as young teenage boys, we were physically stronger than the porters from other parts of India. And we earned well as well.
Wow.
Yeah, so initially, our people were not confident. They were not willing to subscribe papers from us because they thought that Nagas may not be disciplined. But we proved them wrong. And we did that again in 1998 when I was a lecturer. We motivated young people to start selling newspapers, and they did it well. And now there are some young Naga boys and girls who have taken it as part of their employment engagement.
So, I think even right now, we still have that notion on what would people say, what would people think, and that thinking is still going on. So, what is your advice here with a lot of these experiences and where you still continue to encourage young people, whoever comes under EA for training or for internship, to learn the art of being a salesperson, right? So, do you this tagline of we are not from the business community, we don't have the skills, or it's not in our DNA. Do you think that's a wrong tagging, or it's something that we have not explored? What? Yeah, I mean, can you say more on this?
Yeah, this is interesting because, like any other place in the world, a lot of young people keep on thinking what would people think about them. But if once grows up, we realize that it doesn't really matter. And nobody was really thinking about us when we were doing those things. And so this reality of a life perspective, where when we are young, we tend to worry about what will people think about us. It's common worldwide, I think. For us Nagas, when we talk about entrepreneurship, we really don't have this experience because we come from a very self-sustaining agrarian economy. For us, agriculture and self-sustenance was the key to what we call economic security. We didn't have monarchs or lords or nobility who could hoard wealth or amass wealth. For us, even though in some communities, Naga communities, we had chieftainship, we didn't have any monarchy. So therefore, for us, accumulation of wealth means sharing of wealth. And that gave rise to a famous concept, what we today we call as Feast of Merit concept, sharing your wealth for the community and you becoming as any other person after sharing your entire wealth, but you get recognized, you get recognition from the society and you get appreciation from the society, but nobody actually hoards wealth. So for us, the modern economy where the entrepreneur hoards wealth, or the history of other societies where monarchies, the landlords, or the zamindars, or the kings and emperors hoarded wealth. We didn't have this concept. And so for Nagas to think of entrepreneurship was something new. So the first, if we see our exposure to the modern economy, the first market economy that came into place was after the British really established their control over the Naga Hills in 1880s. But that was a limited exposure. Then came in the Second World War. And after post the Second World War, we kept on having a lot of political conflict. The real modern economy that we experienced probably was after the 1970s, even not after 1963 of statehood. And so for our people, when we think about modern economy, it's not wrong for Naga to think that government job or the tertiary sector, which comes through government salary, is what modern economy is. And so for us, when we want to think about modern economy, we automatically associate it with government spending, government salary. So for us, we don't know that modern economy is really about entrepreneurship, about revolutionary wealth being created out of the market. And so we have come to a point that some people think business is not a cup of tea for Nagas, which is not true. In fact, Nagas can be very astute and very sharp business people. We have been in this space for 22 years. We have worked with thousands of young people, and they are first generation entrepreneurs. We have some bottlenecks in the sense the financial institutes are still taking time to work with us. There's a lot of mental blocks and branding blocks in the sense when they say that the banks may look at us as from the lens of tribals. The banks may look at Nagaland from the lens of, NPS, non-performing assets. And the investors may look at Nagaland from the lens of Disturbed Area Act, which of course, happily some of the districts now are out of the Disturbed Area Act. But for too long, Nagaland has been branded negatively, and to some extent, we ourselves has accepted that the idea of tribals, and so we have begun to think that we are tribals. We are not like business class like the Marwaris or others, and so to a certain extent, this can become self-defeating. But I think this is rapidly changing, and we are beginning to astound ourselves all the time because I see a number of young people getting into business and succeeding. So, 20 years ago, Nagaland is no more the same today. And I think the acceleration of change that we are going to witness in the next 10 to 15 years is going to be much more massive than the change that we saw from 1920 to the year 2000. The change that we saw in the last 80 years from the colonial rule to statehood, and after that the coming of some quasi-normalcy. From now 2010 onwards, the acceleration of change is going to be huge, and it is going to be much faster than what we have seen in the last 80 years, 1920 to the year 2000. And the change that we have seen from 2000 to 2015 is why I coined that is, this is the period when a little bit of acceptance of entrepreneurship has happened in Naga families, I think. And today, this new wave of young people taking up business is going to be much more accelerated and much more pronounced than what we have seen from 1920 to 2000, and from 2000 to 2015. In 15 years space of change, we will be seeing that in the next 2-3 years space. And those people who are entering into this new economic wave of change will see that in the next 10 years they would have outstripped the time of Nagas taking to create wealth in the last, let us say, 100 years.
So, taking from the last word, 100 years, but I want to go back a little bit, and especially from the journey at a time when you started and the new generation entering entrepreneurship. Your struggle then and the struggle now, how different is it?
Well, when we went to business, a simple thing like a shopkeeper being able to speak good English was a shock. Nobody would expect a shopkeeper to be speaking good English. That was 20 years ago. Today, if you say you are going to take up business, and if you don't know how to speak good English, people would think, why are you entering into business? So that's very subtle, small change, but it's a game changer of perception. Two was in 1995. Every graduate wanted to be a government servant. Every family expected a graduate to come back with NLG. In those days, there was no NL10, it was called NLG car. No? Today, the parents are beginning to think that, well, everybody will not get government job, which is true. But the parents are also beginning to accept that if you want to take up entrepreneurship, and if you are willing to pay for it, go ahead. No? So there are many families who are accepting the reality that it is okay for their children to take up entrepreneurship. So I think the perception, the mindset in the last 25 years has been quite huge. And I would not say that it's because of the work of the Entrepreneurs Associates, which I think that will be too much, but the world of the Nagas has really changed. And so the mindset is also rapidly changing. And I believe that this change will be accelerated much more in the coming 5-10 years. what we took 20 years to come to this point, the next point will be, it may take only 3 years or it may take only 5 more years. And whoever does not understand the importance of business and entrepreneurship in the development arena of Nagaland or for the whole world will be left behind. So it's for the educated, for the smart to think outside the government box. And I think they are fortunate because even the banks are changing. The banks are becoming much more proactive. The parental mindset has changed. The societal expectations have changed. So today, there is much more better social acceptance than 20 years ago. And there is much more better business ecosystem than 20 years ago for anybody to take up entrepreneurship.
So that also leads to this thought, because there has been a lot of exchanges among the past business community, and we often think, this is going back again, I'm going a little back to move forward, because as much as we're listening, we're also moving towards the progressive Naga society. But when we look back, we also realize that we did have Nagas who were creating a business community, but unfortunately, we don't hear about them. And hence also the thought, including myself and many of my circles, we think that we're not business community. We don't know the ABCD of money management. We don't know, or we don't have the skills like other communities, and we compare ourselves a lot. So I was hoping if you could help us understand this, that why is it that we have not spoken about our business communities, our own people who have flourished, who have tasted the water of failures, but also have succeeded. And today we still have success stories of business community, but they're not visible. Is there a reason that you feel personally and through your experience that why as people we have not spoken about it and we have not come forward? And hence the mindset of, oh, it is not in our DNA. But like you have said, the myth is not true, you know. But I really want to go back that do you feel that we need to bring out more of these stories?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, during the British days, during the British colonial days, those people who went to trading could make much more wealth with one trading season than a rich person could make in 1 year. So there was a new definition of wealth creation which was beginning to take shape during the colonial days. And there are stories where those people who did trading, or those people who sold handmade guns, bata, muzzle loading guns, they could sell much more and they could give community feasts. For example, like I think the name is correct, Lulevo from Konoma village. Okay. He gave lavish feast of merit and also gave lots of thousands of money again for the community, which in those days, in the 1940s, was unthought of. For example, there were also some rich Aos who could donate more than 60,000 rupees to the freedom struggle of the Nagas when in the 1940s. These are some interesting records. But after the political conflict that happened in Nagaland, the market economy was overshadowed by the political conflict, and government-based income became pervasive all over Nagaland. And after the statehood, the growth of business did not really took off. After the statehood, the growth of business or entrepreneurship did not grow as much as it should have. We had a steep rise of contractors and suppliers, but many of them actually did not display the type of rich wealth holding during the British days. where the rich actually donated and contributed to society. And I think those people who became rich after the statehood through supply and contract, they went to the culture of hoarding wealth for the family, which is not wrong. This is good. But to a great extent, they became invisible because they started building family wealth. Whereas this was not there in our Naga history. And then by the 70s and 80s, the bureaucrats began to seen as the rich in Nagaland. Until today, we still have about maybe 70% of the buildings and good houses in Nagaland most probably are owned by bureaucrats. And maybe the rest 30% are owned by politicians or suppliers, contractors, and maybe very few business class who are into retail business. So till today, the Nagas associate success with government job and government spending and not on building market economy.
So this brings to going towards how culturally, from a Naga context, from what we were and where we are now, and the transition. So before it was the barter system, right, Kapitao? And then now coming back to how we are accumulating wealth. So how do you feel that the change that has happened over our change of lifestyle, our approach to becoming a progressive society, somewhere in this wealth accumulation or in terms of moving towards a progressive society, have we somehow lose ourselves traditionally and culturally? And do you feel that somewhere our identity is also confused in terms of creating a new identity? Because there seems to be a lot of confusion of who we are or what we want to be. So would you mind sharing a little bit of your thought on that?
I wouldn't say we are confused, but I would say we are evolving. And it takes time for society to really understand how we should evolve on, or with how much acceleration we are evolving. And in the last span of, let us say, 50 years after the statehood, one of the understanding of the Nagas about modern economy or wealth creation or wealth accumulation was associated with government salary, with government spending, government expenditure. And just in the last 5 to 10 years, we are beginning to experience that wealth accumulation, wealth generation, or what I call revolutionary wealth is being created out of market. Suddenly, people who are automobile dealers in Nagaland are beginning to get more money than government servants. Suddenly, people who own small petrol pump outlets are able to live better than government servants. These are just indicators of how we are beginning to understand the evolving market systems. Now, people are beginning to see that people who have hotels, maybe a small hotelers of 20 rooms, 30 rooms, are able to make better money than government servants. Now, this what I call the revolutionary wealth. The change is going to be much more. We have been looking at our culture, which is agri-based, to be something as minuscule or something which is very much lower than government salaried income. But this is changing. I will tell you, one of our farmers under Trees for Wealth movement, in 2021, he clocked in about 14 lakhs by just selling fruits and selling tree nurseries. I'm sure this year it won't be less than 10 lakhs as well. But the revolutionary wealth associated with agriculture is going to grow much faster than what we have thought of. There are now people who are taking up micro enterprises in piggery, and it won't be a surprise in the next 2-3 years for a piggery unit to be earning about 50-60 lakhs per annum. And I won't be surprised in the next 5 years if we have piggery units that will generate over 1 crore income per annum. And therefore, the understanding that government job is the only one which gives us wealth, is going to be changed. And for people who are going to get into serious business, they are not going to look at 1 crore income per annum. They are going to look at 20, 30 crores, 100 crores per annum, which in no way the government job can match. So this revolutionary wealth created by the market, and the way our people are beginning to perceive the market as a wealth creation playground is a huge shift from what we earlier understood. So it takes time for our people to understand where we are landing, because from the agrarian culture, we just went into the government salaried culture. And now from government salaried culture, we are getting into the market wealth culture. But so I feel that it's part of our evolving culture of understanding how our society is going to move in. And I will not be surprised in the next 10 years if we have many Naga entrepreneurs who will be taken up on logistic business. To me, this logistic business is not crore of business. It's literally billions of dollars, US dollars, billions opportunity, because we are strategically placed between ASEAN economies and SAARC economies. This will become a reality in the next 10 years. So for us, I don't think Nagas are confused, but we are yet to fully understand the opportunities where we sit in.
I'm glad to hear that Nagas are not confused and we're evolving. Hence, perhaps our listeners are also somehow finding a soft spot to have that hope in their heart after listening to you, because you're a practitioner. You're not just a theorist in terms of believing into just an idea, but you actually are putting it in the ground. And this has also led you to go beyond the borders, and you have extended your mission to our neighbor, and that is our Manipur state. Would you please share how has been the journey going to the other side and expanding this idea?
You see, Nagas are distributed in Myanmar and in 4 states in India: Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, and Nagaland state. In all these areas where I have traveled through Naga areas, the priority amongst the Nagas is political solution. Economic development has not really been a priority for many Naga thinkers. And therefore, for us, we have been looking at government expenditure, government spending, government salary as the means of economic income, economic development. And we have not looked at market economy in all the Naga areas that I've come across. So when we started working in Manipur, we have to work with Métis. We thought Métis had a different opinion about market economy. They also were more or less like the Nagas. We thought the Kukis or Mizos would have different opinion because their societies struggles and the Naga society struggles are somehow a little bit different. But in all this, their idea of economic development was also only limited to government salaries. This was true with Mizoram, this was true with Khasis, Meghalaya, and this was true in Arunachal, in Assam, except maybe for Guwahati and elsewhere. Assam is changing, but 20 years ago, Assam also was quite dependent on the government spending. So for us, our challenge of changing the mindset, changing people's perception to economic development, whether it is Manipur or elsewhere, was almost the same. But we found it interesting, more interesting because Manipur had very similar challenges and opportunities that Nagaland faced. And so when we started working with Manipur, we started with changing people's perception and people's mindset. Today, Manipur is beginning to understand how they can also stand on their own feet by creating wealth out of market. Nagaland is not behind, but somehow this has also not been the priority in Nagaland, and so both Manipur and Nagaland will still share more or less the same challenges. And for us, especially at the Entrepreneurs Associate, it has been very fulfilling to see the mind shift in the young people in Manipur. And I am beginning to see some visible change after the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of young people are beginning to understand how important entrepreneurship is. And I hope this change continues. We will, if this is so, both in Nagaland and Manipur, in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see mushrooming of micro enterprises and generation of local jobs in both these states in a big way.
And it is taken from there, having to see as neighbors and getting to know and hear the emerging trend on the growing of entrepreneurship. And you mentioned about COVID-19. And I think this has hit the whole world, irrespective of wherever we are, in many forms. So what were the kind of challenges you yourself faced in your personal space and also in the professional world? And how did you manage? I mean, I think this is something that we really wish to know from you, because not many have been able to recover. And perhaps it will take longer. But the beauty of it is also people have not given up. They're still pushing, thriving, and surviving together. So would you please share your journey of how you have responded to COVID-19?
For me, I think this has been one of the most defining period of my life, in the sense when COVID-19 pandemic hit us, we were absolutely not prepared for the way our market crashed. For 7 months, our office was closed, and we decided that we will not lay off any person. We decided not to cut a single rupee from anybody's salary, and we did it. In 2000, that was in 2020, the first wave. The second wave, 2021, we were closed for 2 months. Again, no salary cut, no layoff. What we found was that it brought in lots of opportunities. And I would honestly say that COVID-19 pandemic really almost eliminated us, because we went into such huge loss. And now we are getting back to our feet. We are recovering. But as you rightly said, it will take some time. For some people, it was a bonus. Like Amazon, they had a record in May 2020. Every day, their shares were growing by $1 billion, mind-boggling. When other companies were closing down, they were gaining. So some people profited. Some people had to shut down their businesses. For our office, it was such a big challenge, but we got new visions. And the new vision is to be stronger and to be more creative. But the COVID pandemic, what taught me personally, is what I learned from the Chinese word crisis, which is comprised of 2 words, we and ji. No, so it means danger and opportunity. Therefore, every crisis that comes to our life, whether it is COVID pandemic, or whether it is a political upheaval like the Naga conflict, or whether it is a World War II like fought in Naga Hills in 1944, or like the statehood that came about in 1963, it all bring about danger and opportunity. The COVID-19 pandemic is a clear example of how we as a people respond to our crises. No? And I want to take it as an opportunity. It was real. For the government servants, it was like extended Christmas holiday. And I remember that people were even asking for dearness allowance. Whereas in the market, like street vendors, petty traders, They didn't even have food to feed their children. But government servants got their pay. And it was a reality shock. How are our markets going to impact thousands of our people if we're not prepared for it? It taught us to be, no, not to be just dependent on one single income. So we are educating our people today. Build up 3-4 passive incomes, not just your active income from petty trades or street vending or from your micro enterprise. You need additional income. And that's what we are teaching our business people to do that. We are teaching our business people not to be just dependent on the local market, but they should have ways to get money from other markets as well. So it's a huge eye-opener for us. And I think that if we are willing to give in our best and up our games, we will come out much stronger and smarter from crises like this.
It's very interesting where you actually touched upon a particular community that suffered the most. And those are the vendors, the business community. And we have seen, I mean, it is not to exclude that the world business community not being paid attention to, but coming back to our own local community level. And I think this is something that we have really not spoken about and not addressed. And the vendors, they did not have any relief, correct me, from the government. And this is something that, as you have rightly said, some have shut, some didn't have a choice. There was no savior for them. So how, as an EA, have you, or are you preparing them now? And can you share a little bit about the vendors that it is under your care, where you're nurturing them, you're making them independent, and you're also talking about financial literacy. And this is something I think it's very important for us, managing our finances. So could you please share a bit of that with us?
So one of the immediate responses that Entrepreneurs Associate decided to take up, we were literally pushed to our knees and we had no resources. But we decided to create zero interest loans to help street vendors get back on their feet. And they had no way, they couldn't afford to pay interest rates because they were really driven out of the market. But we thought we will give them 10,000 to 50,000 rupees zero interest loan, which they can repay on daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis. And I'm sure that helped thousands of our street vendors to get back on their feet. Now we are teaching them how to solidly save little amount every day. It could be 50 rupees, it could be 20 rupees, it could be 100 rupees, it could be 200 rupees, but they must save money and they must know how to invest the little money that they have saved. So, and we are also teaching them how to invest in passive incomes. So I believe this type of financial literacy will help them in the long run. And we are trying to break their mindset. They should not look at themselves as, they must not feel sorry that they're vending vegetables. Actually, the street vendors, if they see themselves at a level of where they can actually get economic security or financial freedom, then it becomes such an empowering thing. So we are trying to change that mindset among the vendors that, we are just vegetable vendors. We have nowhere to go, so we are forced to do this. No, they are doing an important work of linking farm to our kitchen tables, giving us organic food, and in the process, they're able to make money if they know how to manage their resources well. So it's giving them self-esteem, it's giving them dignity, and I believe many of them will become successful in the next 5-10 years. The same thing goes with petty traders. They don't have to be feeling low about themselves that they did not get a government job, they didn't get good private job, so they are forced to do small petty trades. No. They can do that job wonderfully well, and if they know how to save money of 50 rupees, 100 rupees every day consistently for 2-3 years, they will be out of their economic problems and get economic security. So we're teaching them how to even take loans from the bank and try to find out which banks give better interest. Even if there is an interest rate difference of 1%, it's better to go to a bank which does not have hidden costs than to a bank which may look attractive but may have hidden costs. So we are taking up a lot of credit works after the pandemic to educate small petty traders and even the so-called successful entrepreneurs who have been in business for 10 years above, employing 10 people above. Many of them were not really prepared for 7-8 months market closure. And the pandemic has taught us that even with market closure, we should be able to survive. So we are teaching people how to invest. The same process of trying to have financial management in place and invest. And so we are teaching entrepreneurs, first generation entrepreneurs today, that your income or my income should be from multiple sources and not just one area.
I mean, I found that very interesting because you have been emphasizing so much, and we are also seeing the results today. But it's not an overnight thing that has emerged. And I think for people who come in contact with you and the work that you do, I'm sure over the period they've also received the certificate of being patient. And because we often have this idea of getting the results now, and hence the strategy of short-term and long-term goals. And there's no doubt, and I'm sure our listeners do agree, that nobody has succeeded overnight. And this journey is not just about one person, but it's a collective effort of everyone making it into a success story. This also brings to my mind about wanting to know more about this crowd fund. Can you say something more about this, which EA has received?
So there is a wonderful program going on in the country. There, it is known as Grow Fund. They wanted to support 100 NGOs and make them stronger. So all over the country, they have selected 100 NGOs, and Entrepreneurs Associates is fortunate to be one among them. So it's building the capacity of NGOs to be resilient, to become stronger, and to become and to be able to do their work in a better way after the onslaught of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we are very fortunate to receive this Grow Fund and be among the top 100 NGOs that are supported under this initiative. One of the things that we have learned, we have really not put attention to our social media presence. Like many NGOs who work at the grassroots level, Entrepreneurs Associates really work at the grassroots level, and we have not given attention to our documentation and social media presence. We learned this importance from Grow Fund support. And one of the things that Grow Fund is helping us is also, to look at the larger picture. Not just between in Nagaland or Manipur or the region, but at the national level, at beyond the national level. And I think these are needed for many grounded NGOs to grow beyond their operation areas. So this Grow Fund has been a very good support to the Entrepreneurs Associates. More so in a time when we were almost, I would say, demolished by the COVID-19 pandemic. It's not possible for a people's movement like the Entrepreneurs Associates to be demolished. But it is real because we took a choice not to lay off any staff. We took a choice not to cut any salary when the management advised that we should slim down our employees and maybe think of giving half-month salary. I said no. This could be a lifetime opportunity for us to prove that we care. And so worst comes to worst, if we don't have any more resources, we will sell our land, and I will be the first to sell my land to support the movement. Of course, I've not done that as yet, but I thought that was such a good opportunity for us to prove that the Entrepreneurs Associates is different. And so, against that backdrop, the Growth Fund, which has come in to support and capacitate our movement, has been really wonderful.
And I think that's why you stand differently and you're making such a beautiful impact on people who not only work with you, but it is also in terms of just sitting a minute and listening to you. And I'm sure our listeners today is moved to know a little bit more about you. I want to take this conversation a little further, if I may, that there's a shift of change in your thinking in terms of how you do things now, with a lot of experiences that you have carried along with you. And that is also not just EA progressing, but it is also you as an individual. So I would like our listeners to know that how you're changing from a social entrepreneur to entrepreneurship. And what is the difference?
So in 1992, when I started to launch something called Beacon of Hope to demonstrate dignity of labor and to explore whether we can create opportunities in our own local circle. People, in fact, my own parents were very worried because in those days, as you know, political situation was very different. A number of young people who took up new initiatives, if you remember, in the late 80s, were all gunned down. So my parents were very worried that I would be also shot down. And of course, I was not at all convinced that my work would be a threat to anybody. So I was convinced that this is good for our society. So we went ahead with it. When I started the Entrepreneurs Associates by getting in like-minded friends to come and support our vision. It was at a time when entrepreneurship was looked down upon in Nagaland, as I mentioned. And I didn't know that by promoting entrepreneurship, I didn't know I was a social entrepreneur. When Ashoka Innovators for the Public in the year 2000 gave me the title as a social entrepreneur, I said, that fits me. This is what I like and what I'm doing. And so, in the last 22 years, I've been promoting social development through economic empowerment. But now, I am 50 years of age. And so I thought I should also walk my talk. So I am, in my own personal life, from now on, I will start shifting my priorities from social development to building my own business. So far, I would say that 90% of my focus and time has been given for social development, social work. I want to change this to maybe about 30% or 50%. And maybe in another 5 years or another 10 years, I want to reverse it. 90% for my own business and 10% for social work. Why this change? Because I really want to encourage young people that business, entrepreneurship has a future. And if we want to create employment, we can't depend on government. People would be surprised to know that in Nagaland, 11.5% of our employable age are employed in the state establishment. In India, it's only 3%. For a state like Telangana, it's only 2%. We are way above any other state where government employment is being provided. We can't continue, and Nagaland state is a non-revenue state. We can't continue in this manner. So where do we employ our young people if not through entrepreneurship? And we can't wait for Chinese to come and drive our economy. We can't wait for the Americans or Germans to come and drive our economy. Our own people have to become managers and drivers of our economy. And so, I do not know whether I will become a successful business entrepreneur. I have been a successful social entrepreneur, I think, and I'm grateful for that to God and also to the society. But now the challenge will be to really prove in a small way that business is possible even when you cross 50. So, so this will be a new walk for me, and I want to challenge many young Nagas who are retiring at the age of 57, 58. They are literally young. They should not be retiring. They can take up entrepreneurship, and they can be the drivers of our economy. They can be the employers. They can be generators of job for many young people, and for all those young folks out there. Like I started sending out at the newspapers at the age of 19. If you are 18, 19, and if you want to do business, please go ahead. You must be strong enough to dream and make your dream into a reality. And that is much more possible than in our times. Because today, there are people who are willing to back you with your dreams. The ecosystem is much more better than 25 years ago. I want to encourage people to seriously become employers, managers of our economy, drivers of our economy.
And it is here that I would like to ask you, what's your favorite quote that drives you every day?
Well, I really can't think of that favorite quote, but I keep on thinking that we Nagas must become confident. And a lot of this is what I keep sharing. If we have a confident Naga, now we will be able to bring prosperity and peace to the northeastern region. Why? Because we are spread over in 4 states of northeast India. We must not limit ourselves to how the government sees us or other people sees us. We must grow to the potential of what we can be. And our ancestors are very clear that we look at each other as a human being, not from the lens of caste or from the lens of class. Today, if we are to become confident, I want the Nagas to be owners of resources. And one of the best ways to become owners of resources is through entrepreneurship and business. So every day I keep reminding myself that I am in the job of developing a confident Naga, which does not mean that I do not work for other people, Mizos or Khasis or Arunachalites, but because I work in this area and I have grown up from my background as a Naga, I feel that my job is to really create that confidence among our people.
I think I'm going to take on this note and perhaps end with this. Now that our listeners, I'm sure a lot of question is, backfiring in their back of their mind. But may I tell our listeners that when our teacher here in Angami dialect, it's called Kapatao. And today I take this opportunity in using that word. It's because the community radio is actually with the purpose to sustain and also retain our identity. And it is with this effort, my dear listeners, that it is a real talk. And this real talk also speaks a lot about the heart-burning convictions that drives us every day in building our community. And it is with this positive attitude that we bring in our resource persons who are really the change maker in the ground. And it is not just about what I know or you know, but it is in terms of how can our experiences build each other as people, as human beings. And today I believe many of our listeners, even if one person, I'm sure our teacher here would agree, can make a difference in changing a certain gear, perhaps that has been going in a wrong direction, and re-gear it back to a right direction. And we would love to hear from all of you what you think of it. if there's anything that you wish to know more, this is where the platform is. Hence, the community radio is in that effort to search together, to find solutions together, because there's ample problems that is surrounding us personally and professionally, but nothing like listening to one another and finding that meaning in what we do. And it is here that I wish to, take this towards the end of the conversation, Kapatao. What is that one concern of yours that you feel very dearly to your heart and you would like us, especially the young generation of now, that you want us to pursue?
I think, including myself, we all have to really appreciate the place where we are placed in today. Dimapur is one of the fastest growing cities in the country, and the emerging economy that we Nagas are witnessing today, I want to tell you, the young people, that it is going to explode. And if you do not take advantage of the economy which is going to explode positively, where people who are hardworking, people who are willing to work smart, people who are willing to work differently, these people will be the ones who will become ultra rich within a generation's time. So I want to encourage people. We have to now look at things differently. We have to appreciate our land. Nagaland is by default the inland corridor between ASEAN economies and SAARC economies. If we are willing to be partakers of this great flow of wealth across the globe, this can be only done through entrepreneurship. So people here in Dimapur, people here in Nagaland or Assam or Arunachal, wherever we are, we belong to this region of where the brown races and the yellow races meet. This is not just a cultural happening region, but it is truly an economic opportunity happening place. We will understand it, we will take advantage of it if only we are willing to work smart, work hard, and take what I call the road less traveled, which is entrepreneurship. So I would like to encourage people to seriously think about entrepreneurship and get up on your feet and work.
Thank you so much, Kapatao, for actually emphasizing and also moving towards the note on becoming confident people. And I think this goes out to all the listeners today who have tuned in. And we are sure, we're confident that whoever have listened in today, tuned in today, have got something for themselves to improve and to be a contributor in nation building. And it is here on behalf of 90.8 Hales FM, we would like to say thank you very much. And we also wish you on your transition from a social entrepreneur to entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Gugu. Yeah, thank you.
And dear listeners, I hope you have enjoyed listening to us. And we know that you would be having thousands of questions and you perhaps would be framing a lot of things inside you. But believe me, and we have this confidence that the community radio 90.8 Hales FM is with the effort to make the Dimapur district in an ecosystem of coexisting and also building one another as people. And this requires every individual to come in, to contribute, and also be able to make each other aware of how we feel and how we can build one another. And it is here with the positive vibes after listening to our teacher, Neichute Doulo, the Entrepreneur Associate CEO. We are signing off with this thought that in our next listening, we would have someone also inspiring us. So till then, tune in, and I hope that you have enjoyed our listening. Take care and bye.
Explain PO1.